Nicole O'Donnell, welcome to the Tick Bootcamp podcast and YouTube channel.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we're really blessed to have you, as we are with all of our guests. And I actually have a special announcement for folks who are listening to this as a podcast. I'm also interviewing one of your co-authors, one of the people who's profiled in your book, Resilient Hope, Matt Sabatella.
Well, I wouldn't say I'm a co-author. I'm just a very small section and honored to be in Nicole's book.
Oh, you are such
And
a
I
geek,
was
Matt.
honored to have him in the book.
All right. So I'm honored not to be in the book. Why was I left
Sorry,
out?
Rich, I'm
Nicole, why was
sorry.
I left out of your book?
Because you don't have Lyme disease, Rich.
right.
That's why.
Maybe that's why.
I'm teasing. All right. Well, again, thank you for coming out to the studio. It's really a blessing to have you. So why don't you share with our listeners and the viewers a little about your background?
I'm a mom and wife from Staten Island, New York.
It's a shock with that accent.
It's a dead giveaway as soon as I open my mouth. I'm born and raised in Staten Island, lived there my whole life. I'm married to my husband, Tony, who is from Scotland. We have a construction business in New York City, which he runs. And I am just blessed. I see I'm so bad with that.
It's okay. You're not better with this. You're doing very well. So Nicole, give us, we're going to get to your Lyme disease journey, but we want folks to learn who you are, right? I mean, in order for folks to connect with you, they have to know who you are, right? So they need to know that you're a mom, that you're a wife, that you are also, an owner of a business and a president of a company, right? I mean, folks need to know who you are, and then they can connect with you once they know who you are. That's why we're asking the background. So it's not that we're asking you to blow your own horn. It really is just sort of a way of introducing yourself. So give us an introduction now that you get a sense of why we do that.
Well, I am. I'm a wife. I'm a mother. I'm a daughter, a sister. I am very big in the community. I like to always give back. I am an entrepreneur. I did not go to college, but I always have had my own businesses. Before children, I owned a ceramic studio in Staten Island. Once I had my children, became very involved in the PTA and raising my children. And unfortunately, during that period is when I did get Lyme in 2015. And things started to change a little bit, but was able to push through and still continue to be the best mom and wife that I could possibly be.
And you were able to push through until you couldn't push through, right?
100%.
Okay, so let's talk about that portion of the journey, right? So you're a Staten Island gal, and for folks who are not familiar with Staten Island, it is really the suburban part of New York City, right? I mean, we have 5 boroughs in New York City, but Staten Island is really a very unique and different borough than most of sort of the urban setting that we have in the rest of New York City. So as a sort of a suburban gal in a urban city, what was it like from an educational standpoint, and were you prepared to deal with Lyme disease? Meaning, I think most folks who are living in the other boroughs would have less contact with the outdoors. They would have less contact with even the park system, and they were less likely to come in contact with ticks. And I would think that the citywide educational system wouldn't focus on issues like Lyme disease. So give us some insight into that.
I was not prepared at all. I had no education on it, and I would just not feel well. And I would discuss it with friends and family members. And one particular friend one day said to me, "Did you ever get tested for Lyme?" And you always hear Lyme, 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 but I never fully understood what Lyme was, other than you get bit by a tick, you show flu-like symptoms, get an antibiotic, and then you're better. And I just kept saying, no. I've had tons of blood work. And finally, I did go to a doctor who was infectious disease. He actually was a pediatrician on Staten Island who believes in Lyme disease. And I say believes in it because I did go to another infectious disease doctor who basically gaslit me. It was the first doctor that said, chronic Lyme disease is not a thing. So this particular doctor did the blood work and did confirm I tested positive for most of the bands of Lyme. And from 2015 to 2019, I was able to function, and I had what I would call my episodes of not feeling well, fatigue.
The ebb and flow of Lyme, right?
Yes.
The migrating symptoms and
Yes,
the
severe fatigue. I always worked out, was very into my keeping healthy, fitness, eating well. And I just couldn't work out, or I would work out, and that was it. The rest of the day, in bed. Maybe get my kids to school, come home, lay down. And I was able to do that until COVID. And in 2020, I had the first strain of COVID, March 2020. And from that point on, I could not recover. And when I tell you I became a different person, I did not recognize myself, and my family did not recognize me.
Okay, let's pause there for a second. I want to build out a little of your world leading up to the time where you got COVID, your immune system crashed, and now you were a very different person, right? So let's bookmark that for a second and walk back a little bit. So
Okay.
I'm getting the sense that that Nicole was someone who always wanted to be super mom. Like your vision of the way you were going to parent and your vision for the way that you were going to serve your family was you were going to be super mom, and you were on that path. PTA mom, doing all those things for your children, and then you started to get sick, right? So let's talk a little bit about why you couldn't prevent yourself from getting better, even though you had a Lyme disease diagnosis, right? Because we believe here at Tick Boot Camp that that it's important to have the right mindset to heal, right? And the right mindset, in my view, is you need to believe that Lyme disease is preventable. You have to believe that Lyme disease is diagnosable, and you have to believe that Lyme disease is treatable. That's the only belief, in my view, that matters if you have Lyme disease. And all of that requires you to have proper education, meaning you can prevent yourself from having Lyme disease if you understand the Lyme disease process and what you need to do to protect yourself. And if you take reasonable steps all the way up until the time you become chronically ill, you can prevent it, right? When you get sick, you can ultimately be diagnosed when you're working with the right doctors who have the training that can diagnose you. I want to talk to you a little bit about gaslighting in a minute. And then you can ultimately get better if you're working with doctors and you are in a position where you know enough about your immune system and how to manage your immune system so you can get better, right? So let's go back to the prevention piece, because that's a part I want to talk with you about first. You're living on Staten Island, and although it is a part of New York City, it's really not a city. It's really very, very suburban, very much like Long Island where we are today. And if you were given the proper education, you would have been able to protect yourself from getting sick from Lyme disease. So talk to us about, did you get bitten by a tick? Did you see the tick bite? Did you see a
Bullseye.
a bullseye rash? Was there any indication, or did you just start getting sick?
I just started to get sick. One weekend, I just got flu-like symptoms, and from that point on, I just was not well. Now, I spent many weekends and nights at soccer fields with my son, soccer practice, soccer games. Could I have potentially been bitten there? Yes, I live in Staten Island, but am surrounded by woods.
Do you have pets?
I have a dog, one dog at the time. I have 2 dogs now. So yes, pets.
Were you taking any precautions when the dogs went outside to check the dogs to see if they had any ticks on them? I mean, were you doing anything like that?
No, never. Not until later, of course, after the fact. But never checked them. Definitely did tick prevention with them from, taking them to the vet. But no, not checking them every time they came indoors.
Okay. So you're in a tick endemic part of the community. You have no education at all. You have no tools to help you to prevent yourself from getting sick, whether it be on a field where you're coming in contact with ticks, having dogs come into the house, and even though you were putting flea collars on them or whatever other tools you were using, the tick could jump off the dog and onto you. Again, I don't know how you parent your dogs, but my dog's in bed with us. She's on the couch with us. I mean,
Same.
we my dog is on us all the time. So, I mean, part of what we always have to do is we always have to check our dogs. We always have to check ourselves because they're bringing ticks in all the time, right? I mean, it's just a part of what we are. And you just didn't have that level of information, right? So now you get you have your flu-like symptoms. You never even thought Lyme, right? I mean, it wasn't something that you had enough information about where you can now use some early intervention tools to protect yourself from getting chronically ill because you weren't aware of it.
Correct.
Okay, so now let's talk about the diagnostic piece of this, right? Because you use the term gaslighting, and I do want to stress test that with you for a moment, because I don't believe doctors gaslight people, and I think it's really unhealthy to have this belief that you're gaslit. I think that hurts us when we believe that we've been gaslit. So let me give you that that argument for a moment, and then let's stress test the feeling. I mean, the belief that you had that you were gaslit. Now, you went to doctors in between the window of time when you had your flu-like symptoms and the time that you were finally diagnosed with Lyme disease, right? How many different doctors did you see, and did any of them ever suggest to you that you needed to be tested for Lyme disease?
I probably seen about 4 doctors prior to getting tested, and none of them ever suggested getting tested for Lyme disease.
Okay.
I had blood work when I went to the one doctor that I specifically said that gaslit me, and it was very recent blood work, so he did not want to run blood work again, and from that blood work said you do not have Lyme.
Okay. So now, of course, the challenge that so many people have when they are on the Lyme disease journey is they first don't realize that the diagnostic testing is poor at best, right? I mean, it's getting better, and one of the things that Matt and I talk about all the time is we've seen huge progress over the last 5 years in the testing arena. But even now, even the best tests are not great tests, right? And the CDC does properly define a Lyme disease diagnosis as a clinical diagnosis. But the only way that you can get a clinical diagnosis is by a doctor who is properly trained.
Correct.
And none of the doctors that you went to see were properly trained, right? Because they were not ILADS doctors, for example. They weren't Lyme literate medical doctors. They were just doctors who were trained with their traditional protocol. And we've interviewed enough doctors on this podcast to tell you none of them received any Lyme disease training. Even in New York, where you and I are, which is a tick-endemic state, none of them have training in order to properly give us a clinical diagnosis. So you're in that place where you have a diagnosable disease, but none of the people that you were working with were properly trained, and they didn't have tools like a diagnostic test that could probably diagnose you. So let's talk about the gaslighting piece. And the reason I like to stress test the gaslighting piece is when we believe that we have been gaslit, that's triggering to us. It puts us into fight or flight, right? And we're in fight or flight, of course. What happens is, because we have a binary nervous system, when we're in fight or flight, it suppresses our immune system. And when we're immunosuppressed, it only makes us sicker and sicker, right? So I'm trying to challenge this belief that people are, in fact, gaslit, because they're not really gaslit. Gaslighting is somebody who knows there's something wrong with you, and they're telling you there's nothing wrong with you because they want to hurt you, right? There's an intent piece of that. And
I have to just stop you for a second and tell you that I love that. And I wish and I hope that anyone who is newly diagnosed right now really listens to that, because you are 100% right. You go into fight or flight, and it is mindset, and you just have to change your mindset. And for me, instead of getting so caught up on what that doctor said, I just had to, now it could still happen. And I just leave that doctor's office, and it's okay. I just know that doctor's not for me. And I'm going to do the research myself or figure it out a different way.
And let's stress that too, Nicole, because I just because a doctor isn't properly trained doesn't mean a doctor can't help you, right? Because the other problem with this perspective on gaslighting, from my perspective, and I'd like you to interrupt me the moment I'm wrong
okay.
or right, is that there are things that doctors who are not properly trained can do to help us, right? And one of the biggest problems with this perspective on gaslighting, and I do blame the medical community for this, is that we are socialized to believe that the doctor is going to ride in on his or her white horse. They're going to be able to quickly diagnose us, and they're going to be able to give us a pill and get better. So we have an expectation that the doctor is going to be able to do that. And by the way, the doctors have an expectation that they're going to be able to do that, right? So we're walking into a place where we have unrealistic expectations, and I blame the medical community for that. And then what happens is we don't properly define the relationship, right? A doctor works for you. Right? So the relationship is supposed to be, one of the challenges that we have in Lyme disease is that we often find ourselves in a place, at least I've observed from a pattern standpoint, of not properly defining relationships generally, and certainly not properly defining our relationships with our doctors, right? Because there are 3 different types of relationships we can have. We can have an interdependent relationship, meaning I'm serving you and you're serving me, which is, in my view, a healthy relationship. We could have a dependent relationship where I'm dependent on you, so I'm essentially the person who is the tick on your neck, right? I'm the parasite on your neck, right? Or we could be independent, meaning we don't have a relationship at all, right? So healthy relationships as people who are made by God to serve each other are when we're interdependent. But we walk into a doctor's office and we do not have a healthy relationship, right? We don't try to serve the doctor. We're not sensitive to what the doctor's needs are. We don't have a relationship with the doctor where we're giving the doctor the information the doctor needs so that the doctor could properly help us. It's just an unhealthy
dynamic.
And what happens when we use the term gaslighting is we either become independent, and Matt will tell you when we bring Matt into this conversation, I bounce off the walls when people are saying you have to become your own doctor. You do not have to become your own doctor because you're not competent to become your own doctor, right? I think that's a very, again, unhealthy mindset as well, and I want you to certainly stress test that with me. But on the other side, so now you're independent of a relationship with a doctor, or we believe that the doctor is just some robot that's walking in that doesn't have needs for him or herself, does not really want to help us get better. They don't really want to be people who are helping us, when in fact what's happening is they're poorly trained. They're in an acute care system, and they have very limited time that they can spend with us because the insurance system is controlling them. And that's why they're all burning out, right? So is it really gaslighting, or is it a system that we have to understand better so that we can be empathetic to them, we can have an interdependent relationship with them, and we can get the best results we can, understanding what the limitations of the system are?
Okay. I feel like I have so much to say around
Please
this.
do.
Yes.
So I think it's like, above all, like everything you're saying, yes, you are 100% correct. And I think what happens is by time we get to these doctors, we are so frustrated and exhausted and feel hopeless. And the medical system has to change, because what happens is that every time we go to a new doctor, some of us have binders to explain to them, or we email it to them months in advance, because sometimes you have to wait months for that appointment. And yes, you go and they only can give you 15 minutes, the ones who take insurance. So this is where, for me, I find it so frustrating, and I do not take this for granted. I have been blessed, like I'm able to pay out of pocket for some things, but most people in the Lyme community cannot. So now, yes, I do have a doctor who is a concierge doctor that I am able to have that relationship with. But most people in this community are not able to do that.
Okay, so let's pause there, because now, again, I want to stress test that piece of it. Because you're right, most Lyme literate medical doctors are doctors who do not take insurance.
Right.
But most people who have Lyme disease cannot reform the medical system, and they cannot afford to step out of the medical system. So what can you recommend to folks who are working in the medical system so that they can get the best results? Because my argument is we shouldn't be encouraging people to step out of the system because they don't have a place to go to, because they don't have the money. And most people are being triggered into an unhealthy presentation of their nervous system because they believe that they've been gaslit. What can we do to help people in those circumstances where they can get the best results from the system as it exists?
It's a hard question, Rich. Come
It
on.
is a
It's
very
my
hard
job to
question.
ask
I
questions.
feel like I just watched one of your most recent podcasts, and I forget the doctor's name, but from the Cohen Institute.
Yeah.
Dr. Amy Proal.
Yes. I feel like I was listening to her, and I'm like, we need more places like that.
We do need a place like that, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to give people frameworks that will allow them to be successful in the current system, right? Because if I say to a sick person, hey, the only way you're going to get better is you reform the whole system. Well, the only way you're going to get better is marry O'Donnell and make sure you have enough money so that you can go to a Lyme literate medical doctor who doesn't take insurance. That's not something that's reasonable to expect that a sick person who has been stripped of all of their dignity, and they've been stripped of their identity because they're no longer able to work, and they're no longer able to be independent, they're no longer able to serve their children the way they wanted to serve their children. They can't do any of those things. Do they have to just wait for the system to reform before they're going to get better? Or are there some things that we can do where they can get a much better outcome?
I feel like there's things we could do personally,
Okay,
but
so-
you're not going to get it from the medical community.
Anything you can get from that medical community? Is there anything that you can do to change the nature of the relationship between you as a patient and that doctor so that you can have a healthy interdependent relationship that will allow that doctor to serve you? Because if your expectation is that you're going to send a binder to a doctor and they're going to read the whole binder before they come in, is not an expectation that's reasonable, because they have to see so many patients quickly.
Correct.
And the expectation the doctor is going to sit there for several hours the way a privately paid doctor is going to be able to sit with you is not reasonable either. So how can we help patients who are only going to have 15 minutes with the doctor get the best outcome that they can, and also have a healthy interdependent relationship where they can get a good outcome?
I feel like I need Matt's help on this.
I
one.
was thinking I want to weigh in on this.
Because I'm being honest with you. I wish I had the perfect answer for you. I feel like I honestly don't.
Well,
That's a big area that's frustrating for me.
Yeah, let me weigh in. So I had seen dozens of doctors throughout my health experience, Rich. And one of the first neurologists I saw, I brought that binder with me. And when he took that binder, he looked at it and said, and literally put it into the garbage, asked my mother, and said, I'm not reading this, and you're fine, you need to go back. And now the approach was, I overwhelmed him with a binder. I was a difficult patient. He wasn't open-minded, and I should have left and seen another doctor. But I didn't. I kept going back to that doctor. So as a patient, what I have learned is if you get the feeling that that doctor is not open-minded, and they're throwing it in the garbage and saying, you're fine, and they don't believe that you're sick, then you should try to find somebody else who believes you're sick but doesn't know why.
Okay,
Step number one.
What now? What next?
Now, so I had found a doctor eventually. It took me quite a while, years and years and years. And then I started doing research with you through Tick Boot Camp and speaking to people in the community, speaking to doctors who would speak to me, reaching out to ILADs, and getting information about what I wanted to try that I found would have been helpful for me and resonated with me as a human being. And then I would take that.
You worked, Matt, with a doctor who was not a Lyme literate medical doctor. So what were the characteristics of the doctor who was not a Lyme literate medical doctor, and what did you do to create an interdependent and healthy relationship with that doctor so that you could get the best results? Because that's what we really have to focus on here.
Yep. When I was dependent early on in my illness, I was taking everything they throw at me, from psychological medication to steroids to you name it, none of which helped me. And I continued to get worse because I was dependent. And I didn't read my body signals, and I continued to get worse. And that's something I learned as a patient. Now, when I found a doctor who actually believed me, they were doing their best, but they didn't understand some things about chronic Lyme. So I had to go learn and bring information in a distilled way. And I was very unwell, Rich, as you know. I couldn't communicate. You met me when I was at my worst, when I came in to seek you for legal advice. And it was hard. So I had my mother and my grandmother helping me do the research, speak to people, and bring it to my doctors in a short and concise way that fit into the parameters of the medical system. I was lucky to have a doctor who would sit with me for 20, 30 minutes, but that was it. He couldn't go beyond that. So I had to distill it into that session. And when I did, and I said, these are the things I want to try. These are backed by these other research entities. What do you think? I'm desperate. Nothing is working. He would research those things quickly and approve them for me, and I would try them. And every 3 months, I would go back, and we would have a discussion, and we were in uncharted territory for me and for that doctor. But that's how I had to do it to stay within the parameters of the medical system, covered by insurance, using alternative treatments like herbals, and then having success because it had to be this interdependent relationship where I was bringing something to the table, and then he was bringing his medical specialty about conflicts with various herbs and various medications that I was on that I had to come off of. And that allowed me to be successful by partnering with a doctor who did take my insurance. But it took me years to get there. And it was critical that I read my body signals, shared that with my doctor, and came with research.
All right, so let's come back to that, Nicole, right? So Matt had an experience with not with a Lyme literate medical doctor, but with a traditional doctor that ultimately allowed him to go on a healing journey because he changed the dynamic between the doctor and the patient, right? So if folks are changing the dynamic between the doctor and the patient, and one of the important mindset pieces that I want to discuss with you is the mindset that you walk into a doctor's office, you get a quick diagnosis, you take a pill, and you get better, right? Because Lyme disease and any chronic disease is something that you ultimately evolve into, right? It's not something that happens overnight. And the expectation that something that took a long time for you to ultimately evolve to is going to be resolved shortly is an unrealistic expectation. I think on a positive side, because you understand that it's a journey, you understand it's something that's going to take time, you also have the time to work with your doctor and help your doctor to ultimately come to a place where in your partnership you can work together and the doctor can help you because they are doctors and they've studied the system and they understand what is a positive response and what is a negative response. They can help you to get to a place where you can get better. So if your mindset is this is a long-term journey and it's a journey that will take a long time, then you don't have to get the doctor ready in a minute. And it doesn't have to be the first visit and it doesn't have to be the first 5 visits. It's something that can take time. So give me your thoughts.
So I agree with that, and I am at the same place. I am at that place right now with my doctor. I do think it's important for us to be our own advocates and bring certain things to our doctors. But again, it's finding that doctor. And
but is it finding that doctor or is it finding the doctor who will let you take the next step? And then when that doctor has exhausted their capacity, then we move on to the next doctor who can help us make the next step.
I think that is exactly what happens. Yes. For me right now, I'm with the doctor who I feel like I'm hopefully good, like this is it. But throughout this journey, I have been with many doctors. And my husband, because I would go to one place and I would have positive results and feel good, but then a few months later, I wasn't well again. And I would look for another doctor that could try to figure this out and what we could work off of from there. But with that said, you also have your family who every time I went to one of these doctors, I was like, that's it. That's it. This is a doctor. But that's not, unfortunately, how our immune systems work. We want this to be the last doctor, but that's not always the case.
Well, I also think there's a cultural issue that that I talk with folks about, especially Italian Americans, right? When my immigrant grandparents were talking about the various people we should respect, the people who had the highest respect in their world were medical doctors. If you were a medical doctor, you were at the highest level of status for an Italian American family, right? And as it turns out, yes, they're smart people. Yes, they have a rigorous educational system. Yes, they're wonderful people who want to help us. But they have their limitations as well, right? And one of the mistakes that we often walk into this relationship with, again, being dependent rather than interdependent, is that we give them a certain level of status and we have a certain level of expectation that they are so smart that they can get us anything we need, right? But every one of them is going to have the limitations. And once they exhaust their tools, once they exhaust their capacity to help us, it's time for us to move on. Because another one of the lessons we try to teach here at Sick Boot Camp, it's never one protocol and it's never one doctor, right? It's going to be a journey, and there are going to be a lot of people who are going to come on the journey and help you progress on the journey, but it's never going to be one. And I think the mindset, which I want to again stress test with you, that this is the one, is an unhealthy mindset. Because it's the one that's going to help you take the next step.
Right.
When that person is done giving you everything they possibly can, and they're a limited human being, they will make mistakes and have limitations.
It's okay
it's time to move on.
Right.
Unless you disagree.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. I just think when you're in it, it's hard to see that.
For sure.
And it is important to talk about it early on. But Matt, do you agree with me? When you're in it, it's like you can't see that far down the road.
I agree. And I think the problem is that's where you need to lean on your family and your supporters, because number one, you're not having the clarity in your brain to be able to understand these things because you're so limited depending on how sick you are. And then number two, you're so triggered emotionally that you can't see clearly what's in front of you. So I think it's important for caretakers to hear this message and to be able to know that it's okay to get what you can out of a doctor and then move on. And an important factor would be talk about your doctor. Hey, look, I'm having I'm having heart issues as a result of my chronic Lyme. you're not a cardiologist. You didn't really study the heart. This might be a byproduct of chronic Lyme, but should I see a specialist? And maybe your doctor is going to refer you out just to get some tests done in that area. But it doesn't mean one doctor is going to be able to be everything for you, because it is a multisystemic disease. So you have to be mindful of all the body systems that are involved in chronic Lyme and making sure you have specialties that confer with each other to get you the ultimate care you need while treating too.
So now that brings me to the next thing I wanted to talk with you about, right? So we've been talking about the interdependent relationship that we have with our doctors, right, and how we have to change that dynamic, right? But the other thing we have to do is we have to think about our relationships with our families, right, and our relationship with our parents, if they're in our lives, our relationship with our spouses, our relationship with our children, and the expectations that we have as parents to serve our children, our dependents, and they really are dependents, and how we need to first understand what a healthy relationship is with not only our doctors, but the other people in our lives, and how we have to communicate with them so they can give us the support that Matt has just defined, and they don't have unrealistic expectations, right? Because they burn out too, right? Caretaker burnout is real. Child dependent burnout is real. It's a real part of this. And part of the reason why that puts so much pressure on us as patients is because we're not setting proper expectations for ourselves and what we're going to be able to do, and for the people who love us, because they all want this to be the next doctor. They want this to be the next doctor, the next doctor. They want mom and wife and daughter to be better, right? So there's also that dynamic that we have to be aware of and we have to control, or they're going to have a bad experience or a worse experience than they need to have, and we're going to have a bad experience as well, and it's going to be triggering for everyone.
Well, a perfect example, and I mentioned this in my book, I was not in my right state of mind, and so many times I wanted my husband, more so my husband, my kids, I tried to shelter them a little bit from what was going on with me, to understand. Like, you don't understand. Like, I want you to understand, like, what I'm going through. He can't understand. Unless you're going through it, you cannot understand it. But I was getting frustrated because he just wasn't getting it.
So, and I agree with you. I've interviewed over 1,000 people who have chronic Lyme disease, and I know I don't understand it because, thank God, I've never had Lyme disease, right? But what can we do to help them so that they can help us? What information could you have given to your husband if you were to do it again? I mean, look, I want you to go back to the woman who first got diagnosed, and I want you to tell her what you'd want her to know so that she could have a healthy conversation with her husband, so that he could support her properly and understand what reasonable expectations he can have, and what he could do to help her be the mom best she could be at that time. Go back and talk to her.
I would say, have a conversation with him and say, there are going to be days that you might not recognize me, and I might not be able to get out of bed. I might not be able to get the kids to school or soccer practice. I might act angry. I might say things I don't mean. It's not me. It's the angry, sick Nicole. And
in some cases, it may even be the bugs in your brain.
Correct. And one of the things in the book, because I was acting so erratically, my son sent my husband a text that I happened to see because it was sitting on the counter, and he said, I think mom has mental illness. And I remember just feeling like so upset about that. And Chris, who is in the book, I happened to be speaking with him at the time, and I told him, and he said, but you're not. Your brain is not, you're not in your right state of mind. So you do have stuff going on. I had to really think about that and say, you know what? Okay, yeah, I do. But I did not want to acknowledge that at the time.
Okay, so let's pause there for a second. So now you've now brought in the book. So let's, and I want to talk about a number of different things in the book. So I brought the book down because I wanted to be in focus for the conversation. Resilient Hope is this brilliant book that you've put together, and you took a unique approach to building out this book. So why don't you first talk about what inspired you to write the book, and obviously part of it is going to be your journey and trying to help other people to hopefully offset some of the pain you and your family had to undergo if they're aware of it and you can use this to coach them. But also talk about why you took the unique approach that you had taken, including bringing Matt Sabatello into this story.
Well, I think having a community is so important. And on this journey, I've met so many people, and all of our stories are the same but different. And I thought it was important to add different takes on people's Lyme experience or chronic illness experience in general. And I decided to write the book because I did not want people to feel alone and unseen and not heard, because we hear you, we see you, we get it. So I just felt like it was important to put it out there so people did not feel alone and just to give them a little hope.
So now let's talk about Matt. Why, of all the people in the Lyme disease community that you could have selected,
It's obvious why she picked me.
why would she? It's not so obvious to me.
Well-
Why would you pick Matt Sabatello of all people to be a part of the group of people that you profiled in
Well,
the book?
besides watching you guys and getting a lot of great information, Krista, who is also in the book, I think God works in mysterious ways
Krista
with
Nanos.
connections,
Yeah.
correct? I didn't want it to just be women in the book. I'm like, Lyme affects men. I need to have some men in the book.
So Matt's a token?
And Matt was the token. Krista introduced me to Matt, and he was nice enough to, share his story, which I love.
Thank you.
So Matt, what was it like to be contacted by Nicole O'Donnell and asked to be a part of her Resilient Hope book?
Yeah, I'm not going to lie, Rich, because Krista reached out, and it was more of a "you're going to do this" than a "can you do this?"
Yeah.
So I had no choice, and I'm like, okay. And then I kind of ignored it, and then Krista kept yelling at me and telling me, "You're not going to ignore
She
this. You're
told
going
me,
to do
keep
it."
hounding him.
And she's like, "No, Matt, you are doing this." And I said, "Okay, Krista, I will do this." So I ended up, really because I had to sit down, I wanted to think about what I wanted to share. And it took a while for me to think about what I wanted to share and put it into a short and concise manner to provide hope, but also be relatable to people about how sick I really was. And it was really cathartic for me to do that. And when I was done and I looked at it, I was, really just in a different place emotionally, realizing how far I've come. So it was really, for me personally, a cool experience to write the little blurb that I contributed. And I was honored to be able to share my story with Nicole, who I never even met, honestly, besides an email at the
Right.
time. And, so that was that piece of the journey, Rich.
Okay, so why don't you talk a little bit about the book and when you ultimately released the book and the event that you had, and what was it like to meet this weird guy, Matt Sabatello?
Honestly, amazing. His energy, like Matt is the type of guy, and you as well, Rich, honestly. You feel like you know you forever when you meet you. That's just... He came in, he was so excited. He had a balloon for me. He was just great. And everybody loved him. Everyone that was in the book was there, other than Chris, who couldn't make it. But, right, everyone was just it was just great to meet everybody.
It was amazing. And for me, when I walked in that door, it was so cool to see how sick Nicole. I didn't know what to expect, Rich, because reading the book, I knew she made progress, but I didn't know what to expect walking in, with her family, right? And seeing just the amount of people there that were showing love and support for Nicole and what she's doing, her friends, her family, people that knew her just second, third, fourth, extended relationships. And just the community she's built was such a cool experience, because we need more people with that kind of, I'll say, warmth and just personality to help us raise awareness through the book, through her outreach. And that's exactly what it was. She has a family. She has a family of hundreds of people that were there to support her. And I was honored to be a part of that experience.
Okay, so now let's talk about community, right? Because, I'm often cautious about urging people to become part of various Lyme disease communities. And, part of that comes from now someone who has been working in this community for the last now almost 6 years, that there have been a lot of negative comments that people have made, and they were so unhealthy that Matt couldn't respond to these comments because it would be triggering to him and have a negative impact on his health, right? So I became the guy who responded to all of the cranky people. And in the beginning, what would happen is because I'm aggressive and people would be aggressive, I would be aggressive back with them. And then I finally had, I had to learn to show grace because they're sick people who weren't feeling well, who were triggered themselves, who were not mean and trying to hurt anyone, although the result was mean and in some cases would be hurtful. But I had to try to help them to understand that they were in a difficult space because of their disease, and that I had to not allow them to attack other people, but I also had to make sure that I understood that I wasn't also going to be hurtful in the way that I responded to them. So because of that experience that we've had for many, many years, I'm always careful about urging people to find a group to be a part of, because you don't want to be in this pity party and you don't want to be triggered all the time, and you don't want to have all these sick people saying mean things to each other, which is what we had seen. So give me your thoughts on community, which is what I love about this book, right? Because it's a safe communal journal, I'll call it, where it's hopeful. It shows you patterns. It allows you to connect to other people, but you don't have to worry about being attacked when you're reading this book.
Right. Community is very important. However, I think it's like a doctor. You have to find a community, and then at some point, if it's not working for you, move on to a different one. And I've done that many times, because I am in agreement. There are some communities that are triggering, make you feel stuck. Like in the beginning, when I first started looking, researching communities and different things, I can't think of the name of it right now, but there was a group that used to do like a monthly call, and that was triggering for me because I felt like I was the person that was like, I don't want to be stuck in this. I want to heal. I want to cure. I don't want to talk about all these negative symptoms every weekend. So you need to move on from it. It just wasn't for me. I had to find different groups and my people.
All right. So Matt, give us your thoughts about groups and how this sort of gave a dynamic that was safer than in many cases we've seen with other groups.
Well, I can tell you this experience was not what I expected, because knowing a lot of the Lyme community and how sick we are, oftentimes, as Nicole noted, Rich, it's just a symptom. Everybody's sharing symptoms. Everybody's just getting more and more afraid that they're never going to get better, sharing stories about how they're not where they want to be. This was so different. So I got to meet a lot of Nicole's friends. And Nicole, what was the gentleman's name who runs the gym?
Oh, Sal.
Sal. So Sal, right away, I talked to this gentleman, Sal, and he runs this boxing gym. And he's not personally impacted by Lyme disease, but he just was so supportive of Nicole and so many others from the gym.
Well, he's affected. His health is not affected.
His personal health was not affected. But he was just such a kind gentleman who was there to support everybody. And everybody, there was other people that were there that were just part of Nicole's life who also were impacted by other tick-borne illnesses. But they weren't there to say you're never going to get better. They weren't there to say your life sucks. So they were there to say we've made progress, we have more to go, and we know we can get there. And they were surrounded by loved ones. So I got to meet another gentleman's parents who were there just looking for information to continue to help him get better. So this was a productive group of people who knew they can get better and were looking for shortcuts and guidance to get there, which is not something I encounter often in this space, Rich.
So I want to bring a couple more things up that I'd like you to stress test with me. One of the criticisms of Tick Boot Camp that we've heard from other groups and from other people at times is that we're the Heal or Bust podcast, and now the Heal or Bust YouTube channel, right? And initially I will tell you that pissed me off, because the implication was that we weren't being sensitive to the needs of some of the folks in the community. And then I sat back and I thought, yeah, we are the Heal or Bust podcast. Yeah, we are doing this because we want people to get better. And yeah, we should celebrate helping people on that journey, but we do not want to be the podcast that says it's okay for you to be sick. It's okay that that you're not going to get better, and it's okay for you to identify as a sick person. So give me your thoughts on my perspective on now celebrating what had been a criticism of Tick Boot Camp being the Heal or Bust podcast.
I think you should celebrate it, because I think with Lyme, what happens is that we have to celebrate where we are. Like I always say, if you look back, like I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't exercise. I'm back exercising. You have to just look at the positives. Is it perfect? No. I'm still every day have to make sure I do my meditation. I don't let fight or flight take over. I don't get in that PTSD as soon as I see something wrong. Like this morning, I literally woke up and felt like my lips were swollen. And I'm like, what is this? Like I took dairy out of my diet. It's like your
The
brain.
day of a podcast, you're walking in with big lips.
And then in the car coming here, I'm like, look in the mirror and I'm like, something looks swollen. I'm like, you could very easily, but we have to celebrate. And even Jasmine, who's in the book as well, I tell her all the time, like, because she's not there. But I'm like, when I first met you, you couldn't get out of bed. There were days like you felt like you couldn't walk. So we have to celebrate that. And you're on Tick Boot Camp, you're giving us different tools that will help us to get to that point, whether it's an interview with another Lyme patient, a doctor. So I think it's amazing.
So, and I'm not looking for a celebration of Tick Boot Camp.
No, I know that.
What I'm looking for is have a conversation with you about mindset, right? Because if you don't desire to get better, you're not going to get better.
Correct.
Right? And there are many reasons why people will not desire to get better, some of which happens to be that you don't believe you can get better, right? Mm-hmm. So what you want to do is you want to be comfortable where you are because you've lost so much and you don't want to lose more, right? So that desire piece is an important one that we have to acknowledge and we have to recognize. And some of that has to do with, losing a sense of self, right? Losing your identity. And because you've lost your identity, you've lost your sense of self, and you don't want to lose any more, you just want to stay where you are. And this is one of the things I learned from Matt, and I talked to you about one of our guests in the past, Heather Glovac, where Matt was afraid to do anything. He was afraid to take a walk with me. He was afraid to try the HPA balance. He was afraid to try anything. Mm-hmm. So I became the minor bird for Matt. Like, well, you're not sick, Rich, so why don't you try this? Mm-hmm. And you're not sick, and why don't you try this, right? Because he was afraid to lose anything, right? So there was this undermining of his desire to get better because he didn't think he could get better, right? So that desire piece is the one that I want to focus on with you, because if you're surrounding yourself with a bunch of people who don't think they can get better, and you're surrounding yourself with a bunch of people who are helping you to have a mindset and an identity which causes you to believe you're not going to get better, you may lose the desire to get better. Mm-hmm. Another part of that I'd like you to, on the desire piece is, because so many people have lost so many social contacts and so much social support, and now you have a group of people who you are now being supported by because they're in a similar situation, you don't have a desire to leave them. Mm-hmm. So give me your thoughts on the desire piece having to come first, so you can then get to belief, and then you can get to these other pieces, but that desire piece.
I feel like
I didn't promise it would be easy.
No, that's not easy. So I experienced the same thing. I was scared to do everything. I was scared to travel. I was scared to drive places by myself. It was always the what if. What if I feel like I can't breathe? What if I this? What if I that? And then I think it was Krista Nanos again who said to me, well, what if it doesn't happen? Or what if you're fine? That's how I live now. I mean, I still feel as though I sometimes can get caught up in, like, I don't know if I could do this. I don't know if I'm going to be okay. But for me, the desire, like, I want to enjoy my life. I want to do all of these things. I want to experience moments with my family, with my friends. Just recently, I posted, my daughter goes to school in Scotland. And I posted, I went there by myself. I rented a car. I drove in Scotland. Even though my husband is from there, I never drove there before.
Wrong side of the road.
Yeah.
Wrong side of the road. That was huge for me. It's like those little moments, like, we have to truly celebrate. So yeah, I don't know if that answered your question.
No, it does. It does.
But
And so I want to share another observation with you. We had one of the most brilliant people we've ever interviewed on this podcast protocol is a woman named Heather Glovac. Mm-hmm. And Heather Glovac taught us that you have to be prepared to grieve into the community, mm-hmm. and then grieve out of the community. that grief and the grief cycle is going to be a part of your journey. But the part that I didn't understand until Heather taught it to us was that you're going to go through the cycle when you're leaving the community, and you do need to leave the community. You need to leave the community of sick people, and you need to leave that identity of being sick. Give me your thoughts on Heather's observation about grieving in and then grieving out of the community, and how that second type of grief is really as painful as the first.
Well, grieving in, you just don't want to be there. It's like, I don't want to be in this. Grieving out, because I'm such like the person, like I want to take care of everybody. But with that said, I feel like you don't have to fully grieve out of it. Like, I know I'm at a point where I'm not like in it, like I'm going to be sick forever. I do think that I struggle a little bit with still like, yes, I'm sick, but I'm not. Like, I know I'm much better than I was, and I always say I'll take it. But for instance, Jasmine, who I've become very close with, I met on this journey.
Interviewed today as well,
yes.
So we're going to introduce Jasmine to our community as well.
Like, I'm not just going to cut Jasmine off and leave her. She's now part of my life. Like, she's my best friends, but it doesn't have to be our life. Like, other than Lyme, there's other things.
Good, we're there. So
right.
let me give you the grief cycle, and I want you to talk about that, because you're hitting on the piece that I want to. So the grief cycle is denial, sadness. Denial, anger, sadness, bargaining, acceptance. Now, what in some cases happens is we keep going through the cycle over and over and over again, and it becomes what we call here at Tick Boot Camp a carousel, where it's denial, anger, sadness, bargaining, acceptance, and then it's denial, and we start doing that, right? And now that's what's happening when we're sort of in the community where we find, but how we grieve out of the community is that we find something new, we become something new. So it's denial, anger, and we know how bad anger can be, especially with people who we love. Sadness, which could become depression. We start to bargain with God and make all kinds of promises of things we're going to do, and then how we leave the community is we become something new. So how have you become something new so you don't leave the people behind that you've become close with, such as Jasmine, and other people that you want to serve, but you don't do it in a way that causes you to be sick? It doesn't cause you to continue to be sick all the time and identify as a sick person.
I mean, listen, I'm there for her. I'm a friend. Just we're using Jasmine as an example. But I don't let it consume me. Like, I'm not.
But I want to know about you.
Oh, me.
Not Jasmine.
Oh, okay.
Because I understand that the relationships that you've made in the community cause you to want to stay in the community, and that's why we get into the carousel. Because what's more dangerous than a carousel is a flywheel, where it now has its own energy, and now we're stuck, and we're stuck.
I think
in this
why
place.
I have a hard time answering this is because for me, I'm at a place in my life, like I published a book, which I'm very proud of.
You should be.
And I definitely want to continue to, raise awareness, like help people however I can. But I'm also at that place in my life, like, what's next for me? And I think that I'm not 100% sure. And I know it's not sick, Nicole, but I'm just not sure. Like, it's like I'm still trying to figure out, like, my purpose. I raise my children, and I'm proud of them, and they're doing great. My daughter's in college now. But so I think that I'm caught kind of in between.
Well, maybe not.
Maybe not.
Well, we're going to help you with that for a second. So, give us your input on the grief cycle and grieving in and out of the process, and ultimately how grief does not end until you become something new, which is how we find our purpose.
Yeah, the one thing that made me uncomfortable, Rich, when you were speaking is you implied that when you grieve out, you leave everybody behind. And I'm so glad that Nicole pushed back and said, no, Rich, I'm not leaving my family and my community behind. But that doesn't mean that she can't grieve out, right? And my view of where Nicole is a little bit different. And my view of where Nicole is she's had the acceptance. She's no longer stuck in the carousel. She's certainly not in a flywheel. She's moving out, right? And she's moving up and out.
And isn't this book an example of that?
And that book was one of many examples that show that. Her being here today, Rich, on this podcast and touching, so many thousands of people in the first week of this thing launching is proof of that. The fact that she's looking, how am I going to continue to help this community? What am I going to do to continue to serve both in and out of the Lyme community is proof to me she's grieving out of the community. So it doesn't mean that she's not connected to this Lyme awareness initiative anymore. It means that she's now moving to continue to raise awareness, bring the funding, the knowledge, the research all through these not-for-profits. And this podcast will inspire that. A lot of people to donate to a lot of these not-for-profits. That's her way of grieving out. And it can just be bringing more people to our community from an awareness standpoint.
Or helping other people in other ways, right? Because God has made us to serve other people. That's what an interdependent relationship is. I serve you, you serve me. That's a healthy relationship. We're made to serve, right? So our purpose is always going to be driven by service, right? And one of the things that we teach here at Tick Boot Camp is very early on in your journey, what you have to do is you have to find ways of serving other people, because that will help you to define your purpose, and it'll help you to give purpose to this journey, right? Because almost everyone we've interviewed, and this is now the triggering piece that I promised you I was going to give you, almost everyone we've interviewed, except for one person, said that they wouldn't give the journey back. And they wouldn't give the journey back because they found a more beautiful version of themselves. They found their purpose. They found what is unique and special about how they're going to serve other people at the end of the journey. Now, people who are in the middle of the journey are like, how can that be? This is terrible. I feel horrible. I've lost everything, right? But as it turns out, with all the people we've interviewed who have gotten at the end, said they would never give it back, as triggering as that sounds to people who are in the throes of it. So tell us, Nicole.
Agreed.
Would
Because
you
Resilient Hope wouldn't be here if I didn't go through what I went through. And going through it, I always said there was going to be a bigger purpose to this. And maybe Resilient Hope is the bigger purpose.
Or it's the first step in the bigger purpose, right?
Correct.
Because you are a unique and special human, and every single person in the world is unique and special. We lose that when we go through these processes. We lose the belief that we're unique and special. The basic human need that we have to understand that we're unique and special, that significance piece of our basic needs goes away. And when we regain that, we see that the journey was designed to strip away all of the things that have been layered on us that took us away from what God made us to be.
Right.
So let's talk about that, Nicole. So the first step in your journey of finding out who you are is to serve the community through this book by being somebody who's bringing people together, even people you never met before, to be a part of this journey, to come all the way from Staten Island to Long Island and Eastern Long Island to be here, not just with you, but also to bring us the wonderful Jasmine to be a part of the content creation we're going to be doing. Tell us, how is that unique and special, and why are you one of the people who have come out here and spent some time in the basement studio to serve other people with your journey?
Because I want people to not feel alone. I want them to know that they have love. There are people that care, that want them to get better, and I'm living proof that you can. I think I've always, prior to even being sick, I know I'm of service. Like, I like to help people. I like to connect people. I want to see people do good. And I will be your biggest cheerleader. So,
but we started this podcast by you sharing with us that you wanted to be the best mom you can be, right? That was what you were made to do, right? And you had these little people who were helpless and dependent and needed you, right? But my argument to you is that you were defining your role as a mom too narrowly. It wasn't just the little people that were sent to you. You were supposed to be helping people who were helpless and dependent and needed to be supported in a much larger community.
Yes.
So isn't this really just showing you that you needed to go through this journey to really have a better way of defining what God made you to do, and that you were looking too narrowly? And isn't the next step in your life becoming the mom, the warm figure to a larger community of people who need help, because your children are now independent and the little people that you were charged with are now in Scotland and other places, so that you can now be available to a larger community of people? And isn't that what this book represents?
yes, you put it so well, yes.
So isn't that your purpose? Isn't that what you're supposed to be doing? Isn't that how you're supposed to be serving? Isn't that what we're supposed to be doing today? To not only help you to define who you were, because you were always that person with just too narrow a scope, and now you get to see the bigger picture of what God created you to do, and now you're in a position where you can serve in the way that you're supposed to serve?
Correct. Yes. I think it's, for me, just figuring out what that looks like going forward. But yes, I know that is it.
But aren't we supposed to just trust that Spirit's going to take us there anyway, and that you know,
I love when you say that.
You don't have
so
to
yes.
figure it out. You don't have to figure it out. It will be made available to you, right? I mean, once we understand who we are, once we understand what our purpose is, then we just go.
Go with it.
Right?
Yeah. Maybe that's what I have to surrender to, and just.
And isn't that really the most important part of going on a Lyme disease journey? Because the reason you're better now is because you surrendered. And I don't mean surrendering to the disease, but surrendering to the process of the journey of ultimately healing. Because when we decide what the outcome is going to be, when we decide how things are going to go, we're always disappointed, right? Because that's just not the way life works, right?
Absolutely.
We're supposed to go on the journey, and we're supposed to serve the way we're supposed to serve. And by the way, we're also supposed to accept love as well, right? It's another thing that, you know, we've seen as a pattern here, where so many of the people who've gotten sick can't accept love. They can't accept support.
That's me.
They can't accept, right? It's, you know, they're the people that are always the givers, but they're also not receiving. And that's an important part of an interdependent relationship as well, right? That you have to let me love you. You can't just love me, right? You have to let me serve you. You can't just serve me. Right? And when we get to the end of this journey, which is why I'm sure everyone has said, despite as triggering as it is, that they wouldn't give it back even if they could, because they wouldn't be the pure version of themselves. They wouldn't understand what their purpose is, and they wouldn't be able to surrender to the journey that God has put them on.
Correct. And in a weird way, as you're speaking, it's just making me think this journey has brought me closer to my family. It made mine and my husband's relationship stronger. My children, my sisters, my mom. So, yeah, you have to look at the positives even in that.
It's also broadened your definition of family, hasn't it?
Yes.
It's not just the little people. It's not just your husband. It's not just your mom and dad. You have a much bigger family.
100%. Yes.
So, Matthew, thank you for inviting Nicole to our podcast, and thank you for being a part of her book. So share with us as we wind down what this experience has been like to be a part of this really powerful community that Nicole has created through crafting her book.
So first of all, Rich, it's weird being on this side of the microphone, I have to say. This is the first observation. I'm used to being on that side with you. But what it's like to be part of this community, it's special because I'm always looking for other communities to be a part of where they're not going to be triggering to me or set me back, right? I want something that's going to be a positive influence, that's going to help me continue to grow and learn and heal, not to get me stuck. And there aren't many places like that. And Nicole's family, and not just her immediate family, but her broader Lyme family, is just that. And I've met so many people through her, including Jasmine and including many others, that now I know are a larger subset of what we need in this community to have a good mindset, to have a good attitude, to heal and inspire others, because healing is possible, and it's rare you hear that from people. So although it ain't easy, and I understand the book tells you, if you read the book, it's going to tell you it's a hard journey. But healing is possible, and hope should be there for everybody.
So, Nicole O'Donnell, who I'm giving you a new name, you're now the Lyme Mom. Tell me where folks can find your book, and where they can find you if they wanted to connect with you in the larger community.
Amazon.com is where you could purchase the book, and I am on social media, but it's Nikki O713 on Gmail. And you could always reach out to Tick Boot Camp if you want my email.
All right. So sending people back to us, Matt.
Yes.
That's what the best guests always do. Well, thank you, Nicole, for taking
And it
time
was
to
an
come.
honor to meet you.
And it's an honor for us to meet you and to learn all about your really powerful journey. And we often have folks who are sticky in our community, who have names. We have people who are the Lyme engineers. We have all kinds of things, and you're now the Lyme Mom.
Aw, thank you. Maybe that will be something going forward, we'll see.
The next book.
And I feel like I have another job for you. He's so good. Like, you honestly, as you're speaking, I'm like, I wish that he had some type of support group when I was sick, because the mindset, really, it's huge. And even you made me look at gaslighting in a completely different way today.
Well, thank you. So hopefully that will help other folks who are struggling with that. And, I can't wait to interview Jasmine on that point.
Yes.
So, Nicole, where can folks find Resilient Hope?
You can find Resilient Hope on Amazon.com.